Thank you, Johnny.
Run us through what happened at the peace dialogue.
All right, so as custom demands, this actually isn't the first time. We know that the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, as well as the Christian Council, and the Office of the Chief Imam have, in the recent past, been organizing the peace dialogue or the peace campaign ahead of elections, just to bring together the key stakeholders to judge and to commit one another to peace ahead of the elections. Also because of the kind of tension that we see rising each day through the utterances of some of these politicians and their leaders. And so yesterday, it was essentially the same thing that happened at the forecourt of the State House, where we had all political parties. We had the representative of the Electoral Commission, as well as the Inspector General of Police. We also had other stakeholders, such as the traditional leaders and then the clergy represented. And each of them essentially was to commit themselves to peace and to assure their followers that going into the election, everyone would ensure that the country remains peaceful before, during, and even after the conduct of the 2024 elections.
Now, did you get a sense from the participants and the people who pledged for peace that they actually really meant that pledge for peace, or it was just to tick a box?
For some, I can confidently say that for some, it was just the usual, like what we say, formality. Do you get it? It was just the usual formality, because even when you look at the language or body language or demeanor while on stage, you could clearly tell that, yeah, this person is just here because he or she has been invited to be here to talk, and they have come. Because then also, you understand, one of the things that we've been talking about recently has been the Peace Pact, or what others will call the Peace Accord. We know the NDC, for instance, had raised issues about it, talking about the fact that in recent past, especially in 2020, they signed the Peace Pact, yet during the election, a party like the NPP engaged in violent activities and no one was sanctioned, which means that if they're going to sign the Peace Pact again this time around, then they should see that commitment, that readiness to uphold peace by all political parties, so that the document they are signing does not become like a usual formal paper that they are signing, but it translates into real action, which was a key issue that John Dramani Mahama, the flag bearer of the NDC, raised yesterday when he had the opportunity to address the gathering. And so he is even, for instance, mentioning the fact that, see, if they, as NDC, have to sign the Peace Pact, then there should be a need for the signatures or the signatory to the Peace Pact to be extended to other stakeholders. He does not mention, for instance, the kind of stakeholders we're talking about, but he believes that if at all there should be that need for the NDC, which means that the NDC in a way is still holding on to the position held by 8 national chairmen, which the party at large is also holding on to. But you had the running mate of the NPP, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Trempe, for instance, also make the case that no one should come and be on that podium or stage and just mention that they're going to commit to peace when they are not willing to sign the Peace Pact, which was more or less like some subtle jabs that they were trading, for instance. But then also, the concern rises when you have a flag bearer for a party like NPP not attend. You have the president, the incumbent president, not attend and delegate someone to come. There was that kind of readings or interpretations that people were making about such kinds of gesture.
Let's talk about the followers of these political parties and their principles. day in, day out, or every election cycle, we get to sign these things, we get to pledge for peace, and then you find the followers doing something else. I don't know if there were any followers there or supporters there, but did you also get an indication that they were ready to go by what their leadership was saying?
Largely, the gathering was made up of Christians, I should say, who had closed from church, and they had gathered in front of the State House because it was an event organized by the Christian Council and the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council. So you don't see someone wear a party color or someone who is there and portraying to be a party person, for instance. Obviously, you read from the cheers you get, the applause you get when one particular person's name is mentioned, or when someone is on the stage and is making certain points, and the kind of applause that they get, then you can readily tell that, okay, this group of people are leaning towards this side or that side. However, the general understanding that I got from the atmosphere was that certainly people, as you would say, they say Ghana is the hub of peace in Africa. But I can tell you that there are countries like Botswana, for instance, that hold elections and you don't even hear anything at all. Obviously, because...
Hello, Chris? Hello, Chris?
Hello, Johnny?
Yes, sir. You're live. Let's hear you.
Yes. So I was even mentioning, for instance, a country like Botswana that holds elections, and you rarely hear anything from them because they are totally peaceful, And so certainly it's not like Ghana is the only country in Africa that has been known for being peaceful to that level during elections, And so generally the atmosphere is like that. But you see, even on that platform that I call the Peace Altar,
right?
You had political parties throwing jabs, for instance, which tell you about the kind of attitude that politicians have, for instance, Johnny, because we are talking about peace. We want you to commit to peace. You get to the platform and you want to use that platform to campaign, sort of, to tell us about your policies. That raises the question that what have you been doing about the tours that you have been having across the country? What have you been doing about your own engagement with the electorate? Because that certainly isn't the platform. And that alone raises some form of tension.
Right.
One person comes and is trying to rebut what the other person went to say earlier. Then the questions arise that what really is the purpose? Do you get it, Johnny? Generally, people are, like you would say, people are theoretical, they will just do noise. But also, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we've had instances where, for instance, at the Mobi Health Walk, which is a very recent one, Globe Health Walk, turns very chaotic, and you have people being shot at. Do you get it? So it means that it is not. It all is not rosy like that. It's not like everything is so calm like that,
right.
And there are several hotspots like that, hundreds of them across the country, or even within Greater Accra alone. Which means that beyond just the flamboyant speeches that we are having on stages, there must really be an urgent need of call to action by all, and a greater need by stakeholders like the NCCEs and co, who we barely hear about, I don't know, to educate the electorate and send down that clarion call or message to everyone that, see what, we got only one Ghana. And so, like you said, this is also another crucial election that we cannot play with. Go vote, exercise that right, go back home peacefully, and let's wait for what the outcome is.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your time. We're grateful. Thank you so much indeed. And that's Christian Yali there, bringing us some updates on what happened at the Peace Pact signing.
How many people have you, or how many people do you need to create an app? Look at the population. Look at the statistics for the unemployment numbers. Take that into consideration, and then you'll be able to get the true picture out there. See, they said they've created companies where people working. You are a journalist. You've seen certain videos, or you've seen some videos of people who go to these companies and then they are abandoned in some bush somewhere. But on book, they said they've created a company where people are working. But I ask you, a company in a bush, abandoned, closed down, who is working in there? So you see, this particular government, because they are ruling government, I can't go into the past 8 years and criticize someone who is not in government. This particular government is saying they've created 2 million jobs. Now, this 2 million jobs you say you've created, they are on book. Because if you go and you set up the company in the bush, it's closed down. You will write it down that, oh yeah, I set up this company. This company is supposed to...
And those are excerpts from the 3FM bus ride, the mobile edition. Helen was having fun. First time in a Trotsky. Oh my God. It is Anima Kunyaku, the founder and CEO of EN Analytics and Consulting Limited. He's an actuarial analyst and data scientist. He's a PhD cohort. Finance at the University of Ghana Business School. Glenn, good morning. Welcome. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Where are we going today?
Yes. Good morning to our listeners and our viewers. Today we want to look at what we call election cycles in Ghana and election patterns.
Right. Let's get to it.
Yes. So since 1992, the election cycle in Ghana follows a certain pattern.
Right.
Every 8 years, Ghanaians change, maybe Ghanaians vote and change government. And you can realize when you look at the graph of the election cycle of Ghana,
right,
it points to a certain assumption by Ghanaians that they do not have the capacity to extend the mandate of any party beyond 8 years.
Right.
And so let us look at the 8-year election cycles. And there is an interesting observation within that particular data.
Okay.
When at the end of the 8th year rule of that particular government, you can look at the growth rates in terms of valid votes and make an inference from that particular data trend.
What inference is that?
At the end of the 8-year rule, the rates of growth in valid vote drops. So, and it tells you how Ghanaians generally think about your government. So they give their verdict at the end of the 8th year. So let's take the first government we have under Jerry John Rawlings.
Right. 1992, the Fourth Republican.
Which ended in the year 2000.
Right.
When it ended, the growth rate was negative 8.48%. Okay, that is where you had high level of inflation, the economy, had challenges. Now, in the year 2008, the growth rate in valid votes was negative 1.85.
Right.
Then, in the year 2016, the growth rate in valid votes was negative 2.24. Okay. What it tells and the inference you can make is that Ghanaians generally believe that the Kufuor's administration was the best in the Fourth Republic.
Right.
So, if you look at the fall in growth rates, Kufuor had the lowest, negative 1.85.
Right. Was that because Jerry Rawlings had been on for a very long time, military rule, PNDC era, AFRC, and then finally NDC. Would you attribute that to? Because if you look at how the campaigns for the 2000 election were fought and won, you get a sense that people said, okay, we are tired. We have had enough. We want a change. We want a switch. Can you then say that affected and gave that impression in the minds of Ghanaians that Kufuor was the best?
I think even though they thought that, they've had a long time with Jerry John Rawlings, I think at the end of his tenure, the democratic dispensation, you could realize that the economic conditions were a bit rough. So Ghanaians take not necessarily that maybe they have stayed with you for a long time, but they look at things holistically. So during that period, you realize that in the order of ranking, they ranked his last 80 as the worst. Okay. So after Kufuor, the next person that they rank as, let's say, the next,
the best
after Kufuor is the Mills Mahama administration, which comes second. Okay. Ghanaians are yet to give their verdict because, as I said in the beginning, Ghanaians give their verdict after the 8 years. So, in just about a month's time from now, Ghanaians will give their verdict about the 8-year rule of the current administration.
Now, in this cycle that you talk about, where would you place the average voter? Are they central to these politicians in all of these figures that you're letting us in?
What the average voter believes about our Ghanaian political system is that you can do a lot within 8 years. So averagely, they are patient in giving you 8 years. Hardly do they boot you out after 4 years. They will give you the opportunity to extend your rule and to ensure that within the 8 years, you try and do something. But then if you do not accomplish most of the promises that you've made to them, that is then at the end of the 8th year, that is where we see a bit of frustrations thereabout. But apart from the national cycle of 8 years, the parties also have a cycle.
Which is?
The parties, have a cycle. And if you look at the election cycle of the two main parties, you realize that at the end, if the party is going to move out of office at the end of their 8th year, their fall or their share is very heavy. So you take 2000 and you take 2020. 2020 is, as we spoke the other time, 2020 is the only period whereby the NDC won an election or had more valid votes than the incumbent party. And these are all warning signs on the wall for the current administration. So, these are subtle signs that they have to look out for because it has never happened before. So, you realize that the election cycle of the two parties have been consistent from 1992 up to 2020. 2020 was the only time in our political history, in the fourth
Republican dispensation,
whereby you had the opposition winning more valid votes than the incumbent party.
Now, this cycle, some Ghanaians believe that, look, every government deserves to have 8 years and then 2 terms, and then we can kiss them goodbye and bring in another. John Mahama is on record to have been the only one who didn't get his 8 years, stricto sensu, because he came to continue for President Mills after he died intestate, and then he got his 4 years, and then that was it. He wants to come back again. Let's look at the dynamics in there for why he didn't get his 8 years as president on his own account. Why?
Ghanaians generally don't look at the personalities involved. They look at the party and bloc. Okay, so they are not looking at John Mahama as an individual.
Okay,
they are looking at the NDC party as a political organization.
So they count from 2012. 2008, they count up to and say, okay, you have had your 8 years.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what happens within, but once the 8-year rule of the party ends,
okay,
it doesn't matter what happened within. The party has to go.
And that was what happened.
Exactly.
So, if that's the case, the MPP now is preaching breaking the 8. Well, now they don't talk about it anymore because the figures have changed, the numbers have changed in terms of the balloting. Are Ghanaians going to kiss the MPP goodbye from where you said, from what you see, the figures you know, and the historical and analysis and antecedents that you have, because they have done their 8 years?
What I can say is that the political environment currently do not favor the NPP.
In the morning is
okay, but the MPP is confident.
It is more favorable to the NDC than the MPP.
But the MPP is more confident, very confident that, look, this is our election, we will win it.
There are patterns in data, okay, and unless the underlying assumptions and trends change, you stick to what the pattern in the data shows.
Right.
And so about a month from now, we will look at whether for the first time we will have a shift in the underlying patterns of the data as far as the voting pattern in Ghana is concerned.
I see.
But what it means is that if you look at the data point, as we said, I think 2020 itself was the beginning of some regions and some constituencies not too happy about the administration of the
current administration.
Current government. Yeah. So if it is more likely that if the NPP maybe does not put its house in order, I mean, particularly in Greater Accra. Particularly if they do not try to look at Greater Accra properly, because Greater Accra has given them a warning on the sign in 2020.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because of the number of seats that were lost and all of that. And last week you spoke about the fact that if your votes are dwindling, voter turnout is dwindling in Greater Accra region, Central region, you have to watch it.
Yeah. Actually, as I said last week, Greater Accra voted for the NDC in the last election. And that was the first time it has happened in its history.
Right.
So it tells you that already it was trying to send some form of signal to the current administration that, I mean, things has to improve and improve fast.
Easier said than done, is it not?
Exactly. Exactly.
If you look at the political landscape now, and you look at, for example, the investments that have been made by the MPP, Greater Accra, you look at other places, somebody would argue that, well, you have the data, you have the patterns, but we also are seeing what we are doing for the people, and based on that, we think we will win the elections. What do you say to that?
I haven't said any party will win or lose.
Yes, you are just giving us what the patterns are, what the figures are.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, what based on the patterns, what I'm saying is that the political environment or the landscape is slightly favorable to the NDC than the NPP.
What can the NDC do beyond this pattern favoring them? What else is there for them to do? Because sometimes when you get the figures and pattern like that, then complacency sets in. Complacency is what, for example, has, if you like, caused the MPP currently as we speak. Because you cast your mind back to 2020, that was COVID year. But COVID, Russia, Ukraine became the refrain. And based on that, the real needs of the people were not being attended to by the NPP. Now it's coming back to bite them.
Well, I am not into policy issues. I'm into data-related issues. So I would like to concentrate more on the data aspect.
I'm just drawing your mind to something that, okay, if we're doing a fair analysis, in 2020 we had COVID.
Yes.
Now, when COVID came, it came with repercussions and consequences.
Yeah.
So then, if you are suggesting, for example, that in 2020 the warning signs were on the wall, somebody can conveniently explain it to say that, in 2020 we had COVID and we had Russia, Ukraine, we had this, so cut us some slack. Would you?
Well, you can explain, but Ghanaians generally, I mean, everybody is one thing about human beings that we are all rational persons or entities, and so human beings, Ghanaians generally are able to make their own minds as to whether what the message that is being trumpeted by the administration then is actually what the issues were, or it was something something different. So as I said, within the next 5-6 weeks, we will really
know what Ghanaians think.
The bigger picture or the verdict of the current administration.
Does that decision come to Ghanaians easily? In terms of making up their minds what they want to do, does it come to them easily by the data and the analytics that you have?
No, Ghanaians generally have a way of, for example, there isn't that much research into which government is better than the other.
Right.
Okay. But if you look at the data, I've given you one metric that you can use to measure performance of the various government.
Right.
Okay. Now, Ghanaians generally believe that the economic conditions that pertain within the country is a contributing factor.
Right.
Okay. So as we spoke the other time, the bread and butter issues, okay, their roads, all of this feed into the general sentiment. We don't have much polling institutions that actually our polling is more to do with who is winning.
Right.
But the underlying condition and assumptions of why Ghanaians are voting,
right.
What are the top issues on their minds? Okay, I think there's a bit of lack of data and research in that area. But I believe that currently, if you are looking at the top 3 issues on the minds of Ghanaians, the first is the economy,
right.
The second is the economy,
right.
And the third is the economy. People want better, like they want their lot to be better. They want to afford the basic things in life,
right?
And you can see that. I mean, inflation went as high as 50%.
Right.
Recently, that is dropped to.
Down, yeah.
We think
it's still quite high in the 20s and all of that.
Exactly, we are still in the 20s, but if you compare it to historical trends, even 20% for a consistent number of months, I mean, it's still
dangerous.
Relatively high for Ghanaians. And so all of this go into the decision-making process of the Ghanaian. So, and I think apart from the economic condition, people are also looking at especially roads and then other related...
this pattern that you have and which you have studied over time, does it also capture voter apathy?
I think we can link voter apathy to probably the 2 issues, the turnout,
right.
which we discussed the last time.
Right, last week.
Last week. But I want to look at, what we've looked at is the cycle, the 8-year cycle. Okay. Now let us look at the pattern.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There's a cycle and there's a pattern.
Right. The cycle is the 8-year.
The 8-year cycle.
Okay. And then there's a pattern.
There's a pattern.
Okay. Walk us through the pattern.
Okay. The pattern is that Ghana has what I call the MPP and the NDC both have what I call a sinusoidal graph, up and down, oscillation. It swings up and down.
It oscillates.
Yes. And what happens is that if you look at the patterns in the rest of the regions, it is only Central and Greater Accra that has the same pattern as the national pattern.
The swings.
These two swing regions. So it reemphasizes the point I made last week.
Right.
That the determination of who becomes president or not rests with Central and Greater Accra. If you look at Greater Accra and Central, you look at that their patterns and their national patterns are similar.
Right.
Okay. Now, when you look at Ashanti, I mean, their pattern is nowhere near the national pattern. Okay. But what surprises me about the patterns in Ashanti and Eastern is that NDC has not made any inroad since 1992, 96 in Ashanti region. Not even a single percentage point.
But at the last election, the NDC won a seat. In fact, the MPP has there's the total number of 47 seats in the Ashanti region. At the last count, NDC had about 3 of them.
Yeah, so that's why the last time I said parliamentary, we are talking about presidential.
Right.
Parliamentary is localized. Presidential is different.
But then if I'm a parliamentary candidate, I'm able to convince the people to vote for me in a stronghold of the NPP. All right, for them to vote for me on the ticket of the NDC, then I would have added on some few votes for my presidential candidate as well.
It doesn't automatically go that way. You have presidents or presidential candidates outperforming their parliamentary candidates.
Right.
So sometimes even the parliamentary candidate can be a drag. On the fortunes of the presidential candidate. So you realize that when NEC started 1992-96 with 32.9.
Right.
And they have never crossed 30 marks since then. The last count they did in 2020, they did 26.5. Their best shot since then was 2012 when they did 28.3. So you get the concept. I find it very difficult to understand why it is so difficult for the NDC to make inroads in the strongholds of NPP. It is something that I don't have answers to, but it's something that they have to take a second look at.
In the Volta region, for example, which is the stronghold of the NDC, is the NPP making inroads there?
Yes. You see, the NDC started 1992 in Volta, I think about 2.3%.
Right. That's the MPP in the Volta.
The NPP.
2.3%.
Okay. And they have steadily, they have adopted the gradual and steady approach.
Okay.
And they have done it gradually and steadily over the period, and now they are at 14.1%.
From 2%?
From 2%.
That's impressive.
Exactly. And they are currently at 14%. Okay.
So they're making inroads
gradually
in the backyard of the NDC.
Each election cycle, they try to up it by 1%, 2%. So you look at those election cycles, you see that the MPP is gradually increasing its share of the valid vote in Volta.
In fact, at the last election, if you're looking at the Volta region, in addition to the Oti region, which was the original Volta region, John Peter Mewu would have been the first to have ever gotten a seat in the traditional Volta region on the ticket of the MPP. That has never happened before.
Exactly. So
it goes to buttress what you're saying.
Exactly. So the NDC always fall on Central and Greater Accra to push them over the line.
I see.
Okay. So they themselves have not been able to grow their fortunes in Ashanti and Eastern, but they Central and Greater Accra has become more of some region that they fall on to help push them over the line. And I think the NDC should take a second look at their approach and their campaign-related issues in those two regions, because I find that a very serious political organization like the NDC, and over 20 years, over 20 to 30 years, I mean, you have not made any strides in the stronghold of the opposition. I mean, I don't think it's
worrying.
It's worrying, and I don't think it is something that you have to be happy about.
We're wrapping up. You said you were going to get deeper into the pattern. Let's get slightly deeper into it, and then we can shelve for tomorrow, Wednesday, and then we can have that conversation.
Yeah, so another pattern is that when it comes to the Bono areas, okay.
What is now Bono East,
exactly.
Ahafo region,
exactly.
Bono proper?
The Ahafo and Bono votes NPP.
Whether you like it or not.
Yes.
Do or die, they will vote NPP. Okay.
And then the Bono East also now tilt NDC.
I see.
Okay. And then the one interesting aspect is that the Upper East and Upper West are now gradually beginning to tilt away from the NPP. They are now leaning more strongly towards the NDC.
Why is that?
I think that there is, for example, previously they were doing average 56, 54.2. 2012 was where they did much more bigger as 65.5.
Right.
But since then, in 2020, they did 64.5 for the NDC against 32.8 for the NPP. So they are beginning to gradually move slightly towards NDC, and I think it's good for them.
Right.
When you come to Upper East, you see the same pattern. A gradual shift towards the NDC in those regions. I would like to maybe conclude with what I call the one of the epicenters, the former northern region, which has now become more of a battleground, as we talked about, because of those two
candidates,
heavyweight from that region.
John Mahama and Dr. Bawumia.
Exactly. Now, when you go to northern region, okay,
3FM 92.
You realize that NPP has done well. They have closed the gap. Previously, they used to do around 38, 35. In 2020, they did 45.6. It is gradually becoming, and if you look at the trend or the pattern or the direction of the vote, within the next 8, maybe 2024 might be a bit too early.
Okay.
But 2028, either it is dead heat or NPP can take over the region in terms of valid votes.
I see.
Yes. But when it comes to North East, okay, in North East, actually, NPP took over from the NDC in 2016. And they have not looked back since then.
I see.
They built on it in 2020. The NPP had 51.3, the NDC had 47%. So the pattern, the underlying pattern in the former northern region is shifting. There is a voter realignment. Constituencies are now realigning more with the NPP in that particular region. In fact, if it had not been that those 3 northern regions, I think we might probably gone for a second round in 2020.
Wow.
Because of the deficit that NPP had in Greater Accra. But they came and shore up the support. And that is what was able to help the NPP cross the line and avoid a second round.
I see. Thank you very much, Mr. Benizanima Kunyako, founder and CEO of EN Analytics and Consulting Limited. He's an actuarial analyst and data scientist, and he's learning some more at the University of Ghana Business School for a PhD in finance. Chairman, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you too.
Helen, what are your takeaway points?
I think the most interesting or the most fascinating thing I've learned today would be the inroads that the NPP is making in the Volta region. That jumped from somewhat 2.3% to 14%. I think it will be also quite good to put some more flesh on the bones and find out what tactics the NPP is employing to gain such momentum. Maybe the NDC can also take a cue and make some inroads in the stronghold.
Ojengma spices. Ojengma spices.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. It's not going to help them, because next year they are going to write, and it's going to affect them, because the days that they spend in school is just a few days, and these people need a lot of time to learn. And then today the teachers are on strike, tomorrow this and that, so it's a problem, and I don't think it's going to help them. So if they can rescind that decision and go to the normal way, it will help them. But what is done now is not good. To me, it's not good.
The government says that it is trying to go back to the December, to the September reopening, where students go to school in September. That is why probably we have this issue of rushing the students to Form 2 so that they can catch up with their colleagues in other countries. Is that not a good case?
It's not. The last year they said the same thing, and you didn't see anything good. You see, what you are doing, it means you want to reset something, which it will affect the other people. It's going to affect the students because of the days that they are shortening the days for the students, and it's not going to help them, because these SHS people need a lot of time. Me, I'm thinking of 4 years in school, not 3 years. So if it's 3 years and you are still cutting the days, it's not going to help them. So I don't agree with the government decision now. It's not the best.
It's not the best. In one sentence, how will you describe Ghana?
Ghana is in a mess. We are not in a good situation, because it's looked at the institutions are not working. The authorities are not on top. The government recently is not talking to the people. You don't know whether we have government or not. When you get a platform, it looks like it's joking. But we mean a serious business. To be in a government is not like a joke.
Is on 92.7 Sunrise
for you
on 3 FM.
And change things for us in a better way. Not to come and stand on platform and joke with your opponent. It's not the best. It's not helping us.